There are films that just sound absolutely incredible from the moment I read about them, and this was definitely the case for 1,000 Words. Not only is Eddie Murphy in it, who I just think is fantastic at comedy, but the plot, the premise sounded really interesting. So this film's released in 2012, and it's directed by Brian Robbins and written by Steve Koren. I hadn't actually heard of it until today, in fact. So I don't know how it passed my radar, but I do think it was probably worth the wait. I have a few things that I'm not 100% happy with, but for the most part, I definitely thoroughly enjoyed it. So there will not be any spoilers here. You're perfectly fine to listen if you haven't seen it, and I do recommend it. I do think it is a good film. It has a Metascore of 26, whatever that really means, and an IMDb score of 5.9, which is not too bad. So the description from IMDb is as follows. After stretching the truth on a deal with a spiritual guru, literary agent Jack McCall finds a Bodhi tree on his property. Its appearance holds a valuable lesson on the consequences of every word he speaks. So he's basically being cursed or punished because of his behaviour. Every time he says a word, one leaf will fall off of that tree. And there are 1,000 leaves on the tree, and he's been told that if those leaves disappear, he will die. Now that's really interesting, because I thought, how are they going to get around this? How are they going to have the progress? So, because obviously you know that he's going to speak and the leaves are going to fall off bit by bit, otherwise there would be no plot. And I was really curious to see how they would do that. The fact that this is based around an agent is, for me as an author, very interesting. I love any films that are set in that world. There's a scene with the heads of Simon and Schuster, which I just thought was brilliant. As for the rest of the film, I didn't think the rest of the film itself was brilliant. I thought it was okay. There were some moments that were funny. Look out for the word pancake. I can't say any more. I will not describe the scene to you. But the second time that word is mentioned, it is it took me by surprise and it really tickled me. So what do I like about this? Well, as I said, I like the premise, I like the narrative idea, and I kind of like the narrative development as we have various stages of Jack being, Eddie Murphy plays Jack, by the way, being, first of all, in denial that this is even possibly a thing, and then kind of realising it could be true, and then trying to work around this problem. And I think he goes through a pretty standard emotional journey that works really well and comes across well on screen. And even when he's fretting about it and freaking out about it, it's still very funny. You know, Eddie Murphy is obviously at the top of his game with comedy. But there are two other people in this who I love. And the first one has more of a prominent role, and that is Clark Duke, who he pops up in films that I watch, and whenever he's there, he's brilliant. He plays Aaron, who is Jack's assistant, I believe, and he's just very entertaining, and I just think when the story gets a little bit too dull or monotonous, he just brings in a bit of comedy, and it's fantastic. I'll talk about that monotony in a second. The other person who I absolutely love is Jack McBrayer, who plays Kenneth Parcell in 30 Rock. I didn't know he was in it. He pops up as a Starbucks barista, and he just smiles his way through his scenes, and he's great fun and was a lovely surprise. And he's in it maybe about 10 minutes in total, and just fantastic. I really, really love him. So the bits I don't like. Well, there are two aspects I don't like. One of them I can very heavily pinpoint, and one of them is a bit vague. So the vague one is that I just feel it gets a little bit boring in the middle. Because once he finds out, or once he kind of comes to realization about these leaves and accepts this, there's not much in terms of plot going around it. The situations he finds himself in are not that interesting. But still, Eddie Murphy manages to make the scenes quite funny, because of just his acting style. So the scenes, I don't think there's a boring scene in it as such, but I feel like there's no real substance to the plot at certain points. It's more just funny because of Eddie Murphy's performance. And the thing that I didn't like, and this really bugs me, and this happens a lot in programs and films where people can't speak, why don't they just hold up a bit of paper saying they've lost their voice and can't currently talk? And I know it would make a lot of films very short, it would cut out a lot of the comedy, but because it irritates me so much that there's such an obvious solution and these characters are too thick to realise it, it really just irritates me and makes it really hard to enjoy it. I kind of got past that because there was a point where Aaron said, "Shall I get you a piece of paper and you can write your thoughts down?" And Jack brushed it off and said, well, he didn't say no, but he signalled no. So while I thought he was an idiot for saying no, I was at least pleased that the film acknowledged that, because a lot of films and shows where there's somebody who can't talk just doesn't acknowledge it. And I have to say, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, silent movie, is one that really bugs me for that, even though that shows the greatest love of my life. In all, 1,000 Words is great fun. It's a very fascinating plot. It's very funny at times, a little emotional at other times. I have to say, I don't care for his wife. Kerry Washington, very well acted character of Caroline. I just personally didn't give a toss about her emotions, which sounds harsh, but I just felt like she was in the background and didn't really propel Jack as a character. She wasn't a supporting character. She was there. So it's a good film. I realise my opinions are probably quite scattered and sounding a little bit all over the place. And that's probably because they are. But in all, it's a good film. If you can watch 1,000 Words, I definitely recommend you do. It has its benefits. The concept's brilliant. Eddie Murphy is obviously fantastic. If you haven't seen it, I would say it's worth the time of day.